right, so I'm going to be telling you something for Parshas Ki-Tetze that I'm sure you're already familiar with, and that is that when the Torah tells us that when you go out to battle against your enemy, there is a literal charge to go out and battle against your enemy and comport yourself under certain halachic restrictions. And there's another going out to battle against your enemy that every single Jew, every male, female, child has to go out to battle, because life is a never-ending battle. It's one of the things we all know, that life is, every time getting out of bed is a struggle. It's a battle. It's a war. It's a war with yourself. It's a war with your Yetzer Hara. And so therefore, these are appropriate parshios that we read about right before the Yomim Noraim. It's no coincidence, because going out to battle is something that we need to do, and we are preparing to intensify our battle as we enter into these days of awe. The Torah begins the parsha by saying, Ki-Tetze la-milchama al oyevecha, when you go out to war against your enemy, and this enemy is a reference to the Yetzer Hara, unisano Hashem Elokecha biyadecha, that God will place the enemy in your hand. And here it's talking in the singular, because we're speaking to every individual Jew, and God will place him, this enemy, in your hands. Meaning that if you really make the attempt to go out to battle against your enemy, then God guarantees you success. If you view life as a struggle, if you view it as, I need to make a conscious effort every single day, that I have this darkness from within that I need to suppress and I need to combat, then Hashem will guarantee your success. And so that's the first line. This is something that many of the Meforshim pick up on. What I wanted to bring out, instead of just going over the more simple explanation of going out to battle, is to talk about a specific mitzvah which we're going to see from a sefer called Ir Giborim. Ir Giborim was written by Rabbi Ephraim Lunshitz in the 16th century, late 16th or early 17th century. He is known by his more famous sefer. Does anyone know the more famous sefer that was written by Rabbi Ephraim Lunshitz on Chumash? It's the Kli Yakar. Anyone ever hear of the Kli Yakar? The Kli Yakar is very famous because whoever published the Mikros Gedolos Chumash put the commentary of the Kli Yakar in it. And he very often quotes the Abarbanel, and also is very much associated with the teachings of the Maharal, Rabbi Ephraim Lunshitz. And so it's a very, very precious commentary. When he was younger, he wrote the sefer called Ir Giborim, which is a lengthier commentary to the Parshios HaShavua, to the Parshios of the Torah. And so there's a beautiful thought that I'd like to, because of the brevity that we have today to discuss this, I'd like to pick up in the second column that you have in front of you, where he says Omnam. I'm just going to recap what, or sort of just encapsulate what he says up until that point. Ki-Tetze la-milchama al oyevecha, when you go out to war against your enemy. Rashi tells us, based on our sages, that we're talking about not a war of conquest of the land of Israel, because there you don't take captives. You either offer the enemy the opportunity to leave the land, or you wipe out the nations that refuse to either become the Ger Toshav, to convert, so to speak, to the 7 Noachide laws. If they refuse, then you must cause them to either vacate or you have to kill them. But there is something called Milchemes Rishus, where there are times when you can expand your boundaries of the land of Israel, and you can go out to war against an enemy, let's say in Syria, or an enemy in Egypt, and the like. And in those situations, you're allowed to take captives. So what do we call a war that is not for the conquest of the land of Israel? That's called Milchemet Rishut, a war which is optional, or which you have the ability to decide whether to go out to war or not. And here Rabbi Ephraim Lunshitz says that that's the way the Torah is describing the war with the Yetzer Hara, because a Milchemet Rishut means that it's something that you have the free will to fight or not to fight. And therefore you have to realize that this is something that Hashem places in your hands. It's your option to go out to war or not to go to war. No one's forcing your hand to either combat the evil inclination or not to combat the evil inclination. It's up to you. And the way that you combat the evil inclination, what's the greatest recipe, what's the greatest weapon that a person can have in his or her arsenal in order to combat the evil inclination? That's the Torah, the study of Torah. Study of Torah, if a person immerses oneself into Torah study, then that is a guarantee that you will not succumb to the evil inclination. And here in the paragraph Omnam, we're picking up. Omnam, everyone see that big word Omnam? And for those who don't read Rashi's script, I apologize, but we're going to read everything. Omnam matzinu dirachim acherim lahachnio. But there are other ways to suppress the evil inclination. Ki hahi sha'amru razal, as our sages tell us, and we just learned this in the Daf Yomi, it's in Tractate Moed Katan, it's also in Tractate Chagiga. It's a very controversial passage of Gemara that has often been misquoted and misapplied. But it's very important to know it nonetheless. Haroeh sheyitzro misgaber, if a person sees that his evil inclination is overpowering him, is getting the best of him, yelech lemakom she'ein makirin oso. So what should you do? What's your last resort? I'm succumbing to my Yetzer Hara. I know I'm not going to win this battle, so what should I do? Go to a place where no one knows you. Avis atev shchorim, wear black clothes, meaning disguise yourself. Put on, well, I don't know. For me, black clothes is my normal apparel. But wear something, wear your Bermuda shorts or whatever, so that people are not going to recognize you. And then, and then do whatever you feel you need to do through your succumbing to the evil inclination. Va'al yischalel shem shamayim berabim, or befarhesia. Do not allow the name of heaven to be profaned. So if you are someone who represents Torah Judaism, and you know that you need to do something which is profane, which is illicit, then it's better that you do it in a place where no one recognizes you than to do it where people will see what you're doing. Because at least you're minimizing the collateral damage of Chilul Hashem. You did the Aveira, the Gemara is not condoning the sin, but the Gemara is telling you that if you know you're going to do it anyway, do it in a way that you minimize the damage to the rest of the Jewish people. Now this has often been misquoted as giving a person a dispensation to disguise himself and do whatever Aveira he wants. But of course, as you can probably surmise right away, that's not what the rabbis are referring to over here. Okay? Now for men, the Gemara's insinuation is clear. We're talking about some kind of illicit crime, crime with another woman that's not your wife. That's what the Gemara is referring to. But it's applicable to everyone. I don't know what. For women, it's applicable too. You want to go eat in McDonald's, go to the one in Mississauga where no one knows you, right? Don't go to the McDonald's that's right here on Bathurst and Steeles, right? Or whatever your Yetzer Hara in particular is. I don't know what it is. Okay. Oh, okay. Right. What?
You don't want to hear.
So here's what the Ir Giborim says. He says, "V'hu she'inavel atzmo kemo b'inyan eshes yifas Torah." So he says, what do the rabbis really mean over here? What they're suggesting is when they say wear dark clothes and go to a foreign place, is that you're supposed to lower yourself. You're supposed to make yourself, by putting on those Bermuda shorts or whatever you're going to do, you're not going to feel good about yourself. You don't look respectable anymore. And that's exactly what we do with the Eshes Yifas Torah, which is the very first mitzvah that we read about in this parsha, is the woman that you meet on the battlefield, and you have this overpowering Yetzer Hara. So what does the Torah first tell you? That don't allow her to groom herself and to beautify herself, and let her live that way for 30 days. And if you're still in love with her, you're still enamored with her after she's removed all of her jewelry and all of her finery and all of her grooming, then the Torah will give you a heter to go ahead and marry her. It's the same idea, is that, make yourself into that Eshes Yifas Toar, to that beautiful woman who's no longer so beautiful in your own eyes, and maybe that will help subdue the evil inclination. So that's the first step. Try to suppress the Yetzer Hara by making yourself less attractive in your own eyes. Because a lot of times people succumb to the Yetzer Hara through the sin of hubris. A lot of times people give in to the Yetzer Hara through the sin of ego, through the sin of arrogance. Okay. V'zeh shematzina b'divrei Razal ma'amar mitzdameh l'dvarim elu. And therefore we can point to an accompanying statement of our sages who are telling us that there are many ways to suppress the evil inclination. One is through Torah study. That's the positive way to do it. But there's another statement that our sages tell us, which is, Hu Shamru Razal, ilmalei nitnat Torah, that had the Torah never been given, I think we've done this together, lamadnu tzniut mechatul, we would have learned how to, the trait of modesty, we would have learned that from a cat. When you look at a cat, why do you need kitty litter for a cat?
They cover their...
Because cats cover their stuff, right? And they won't defecate unless you put out something for them to cover it with. Who is a cat owner here? My condolences. Okay, yeah. Vegazel minamala. We would also learn the rules of theft. How the rules of thievery we would have learned from an ant, because ants never steal from each other. An ant colony is a collective that only works because ants know not to steal.
But they steal from people.
Yes, that's true. They do, unfortunately. But you're not part of the collective, so. Okay. The arayot miyona, we would learn chastity from the dove. The derech eretz mitarnagol, and we'd have learned about proper rules of courtship from a rooster, because a rooster always courts its mate before getting married, right? He goes through a courtship ceremony, which the Gemara describes, that he inflates his comb and makes himself look really nice and dresses up really nice for his date, So we would learn that from the rooster if we didn't have a Torah which taught us proper derech eretz about how to treat a woman. Ma'amar zeh kvar bi'arnu oto b'shar hatshuva, sham mikol makom ra'iti lahazkir kan hapratim sheramzu bo lefi sherubam nirmazim b'parsha. He says, and I'm going to go on in this lecture, in this discourse, I'm going to go into great detail to explain all of the things that our sages mean when they say this statement. And today, because we're limited on time, we're only going to discuss the laws of modesty from a cat. We're going to learn about the cat today. Harishon she'amar tzniut mechatul pirish Rashi she'achatul hazeh eino metil re'i b'fnei kol adam. That cats do not defecate in front of human beings. They're very modest. They don't want to go to the bathroom in front of people. V'hu l'ramez l'rishayim she'einan makirin bora'av. This is an allusion to wicked people. This is really a message to people who are bad doers, that don't recognize God. Shene'amar kachashu b'Hashem vayomru lohu, that the people who pretend that God doesn't exist or God's not looking. V'harehin domin lechatul hazeh she'eno makir adono le'olam. They're like a cat who pretends that there's no one present. V'chemo she'achatul eno metil re'i b'fnei kol adam. But just like a cat still will not defecate in front of human beings, Kemokein ra'oi l'rishayim she'im ro'im she'yitzram yitkaber az lo yatilu re'i dahainu ma'asim ra'im. So he says that, there are two characteristics about a cat. Number one, cats are different from dogs. Cats never feel like you own them.
No, they don't.
Right? A cat is very independent creature. You don't work for me. I don't work for you, you work for me. That's the cat's attitude. A dog is man's best friend. That's why I think everyone should be, I would always take a dog over a cat anytime. Because a cat, never appreciates what you do for it and just does its own thing. But at the same time, a cat has modesty. Even though a cat, in that sense, is like a person who doesn't acknowledge God. But at the same time, a cat still has the modesty not to defecate in front of people. So even though you may not acknowledge God, but still you shouldn't do bad things. You shouldn't defecate figuratively in the presence of others, when others are looking. We'll skip to the next paragraph. Yes?
I'm having trouble understanding the original statement a little bit. Why does the Gemara say that? Why doesn't the Gemara just say just the opposite? Stay where people know you, so then you'll be too embarrassed to do what you want to do. Use your example. If I want to go to McDonald's to eat a hamburger, if I go out to Mississauga, I'm more likely to do it than if I stay on Bathurst. So try to stay on Bathurst. Don't go to a place where no one knows you.
That's a good question, because we're really talking about a person who's come to the realization that I cannot resist anymore. I'm going to eat the cheeseburger. No matter what, that cheeseburger is mine. It's got my name on it. But it's only a question of how do I minimize the damage of that sin. That's what the Gemara is talking about.
So you're saying the person is for sure going to do it anyway.
Yeah, you're for sure going to do it. So the Gemara is saying if you're for sure going to do it.
But if you're not for sure going to do it, if you're, let's say, wavering.
So that's where the Gemara says if you have the conviction that you're going to do it, then get all in the mode of changing your garb, humbling yourself, go to a faraway place, and maybe that act itself will cause you to change your mind.
I see just the opposite. People go on vacation and they do things they would never do at home.
Unfortunately, that's true. It is a double-edged sword. You're right.
I think it's the opposite.
Your point is well taken, that there are certain communal pressures that prevent people from behaving in certain ways. But here the Gemara is addressing the other edge of the sword, which is that if you feel that you're about to succumb, even within your own community, better to go through this process in the hopes that the process itself will eventually cause you to say, this is just not worth it. And it's really silly for me to want to do this. I realize now, after going through this whole preparatory stage of trying to get ready to do this cheeseburger fest, that it just ain't worth it. Okay? So, V'zen nirmaz, I don't know, for me, cheeseburgers is a big Yetzer Hara. So, because I've never had one, I really would like to know what it tastes like. V'zen nirmaz b'parsha zu. So this, especially McDonald's, I mean, I grew up my whole life watching the commercials. The Zen Nirmas, I'm sure they're not as good as we think they are. You know, it's like you think in your own mind that they're much better than they really are. Okay. The Zen Nirmaz b'parsha zu. So this is where we now go to our parsha. Now here, before we go further in the text, I want us to go to source number 2 now in your sheet. The Torah tells us a very interesting halacha, starting with Pasuk Yud Gimel. In Pasuk Yud Gimel, the Torah says, "V'yad tihiyeh lecha michutz lamachaneh, v'yatzata shama chutz." There should be a special place for you outside the camp that is your latrine. In Jewish law, the latrine always has to be away from the military encampment, and that's true even in Israel today. In most armies, the latrine is somewhere that's far away. V'yatei tihiyeh lecha al azeinecha. And there should be a special instrument or tool that you have called a yated, which the function of that yated should be in addition to all of your other utensils. It should be specifically designated for one purpose and one purpose alone. Digging a latrine for when you have to defecate. V'haya b'shivtecha chutz, v'chafarta va, v'shavta v'chisita et tse'atecha. That so therefore, when you have to go out to go to the bathroom, then you should dig with this tool and then cover it up and cover up your v'shavta, and then return and cover up your dung. Ki Hashem Elokecha mitalech b'kerev machanecha. Why is this important? Because Hashem is traveling in the midst of your camp. Lahatzilacha, to save you. V'laseis oyevecha lefanecha, and to place retribution upon your enemies. V'haya machanecha kadosh, and therefore your camp needs to remain holy. V'lo yirevecha ervas davar v'shav me'acharecha, and therefore you have to make sure that God never sees anything ugly or unsightly within your camp, which would cause God to turn away from you. Because Hashem is your saving grace, it's the only way that you're going to win this battle. You have to make sure that you don't do anything that's unseemly within the military encampment. So therefore you have to have a latrine that's outside the camp, and even after you defecate, you have to cover it up with this special tool. When I went to visit Nachal Charedi, one of the frum boys, this is a few years ago, proudly showed me his yated. His yated. This is not the newspaper, the yated. He showed me his special, like a spade, like a little like gardening spade. It was part of his backpack detail, right? And he says, this is my yated. This is according to what the Torah says, that we have to have a special tool for digging our latrine. Like he was so proud of the fact that in the Israeli army we fulfill the ways that the Torah wants us to live, even when we're in the military. So in any event, so it says over here like this. He says, this is all not just referring to the soldier at war who has to dig a latrine. This is all an allusion to the way that you and I are supposed to live our lives. He says, Hareisha ra'ui le'adam lechasot harei. He says that's just like a cat covers its dung with the kitty litter. Every human being has to know how to cover up his or her dung. Dahainu hama'asim hara'im. This refers to the things that we do that are improper. Hanim shalu litzoa, that are compared by the Torah to dung. V'shiyetze michutz lamachaneh v'sham yatil harei. So when you have to defecate, you got to do something that's really not proper. Go outside the camp and defecate there. And that's consistent with what our sages said, that when you know that you're overcome by sin, then go to a place outside your community where people don't recognize you. And wear dark clothes and disguise yourself. Because through the act of making yourself look not so important, you can like the Bermuda shorts like I talked about, you'll become humbled, and you'll be embarrassed. Like, am I really about to do this? Like, look at myself in the mirror, and I've gone through this whole masquerade to travel far away and to do all of these, and to make myself look like a bum, because I don't want people to see me as, Rabbi so-and-so doing this thing, and I'm going to go outside the camp to do this. Am I really about to do this? How lowly, how abasing of an experience this is, and this is supposed to prevent you from committing the sin. V'zehu she'amar kan v'chafarta ba v'shavta v'chafarta hulashon busha. So that's why it says over here v'chafarta ba, that you should v'chafarta dig. Dig doesn't just mean lachpor. It doesn't just mean to dig in Hebrew, right? The chafra halevana means the sun will be, the chafra halevana means the moon will be ashamed. In other words, the act of digging is also the act of shame. The chafarta ulashon busha v'ratzabas and v'shavta, and the word v'shavta in the pasuk means that you'll do tshuva. You'll be embarrassed and you'll do tshuva. That just like a ganav, when he's caught, is humiliated, is embarrassed, so too when the Jewish people go and realize what they're doing is wrong, they'll be embarrassed. Just like a ganav, when he's about to commit an act of theft, acts covertly. That so too these people who are about to sin, they'll sort of, their conscience will gnaw at them. That when they have to go outside the community to a place where no one recognizes them in order to defecate, which means to act out on their evil thoughts. So he'll realize I'm just like a ganav who has to sneak about. It's one of the biggest disincentives for adulterers. It's such a laborious thing to have to hide from everybody. You're living a lie, and so eventually you'll be discovered, right? And people just they can't live with themselves. And through thinking this through and going through the motions, you'll realize, I can't even go through with it. That's why the pasuk says that you'll dig and you'll return. That through your embarrassment of going through this process, you'll do tshuva. And this is the advice that our sages give us to someone who sees that his Yetzer Hara is getting the best of him and he or she is about to succumb. This is the way to go about it. Yes?
Something about this is bothering me, and I just clarified in my head what's bothering me.
Please, go right ahead.
With all due respect to the Kli Yakar, of course. because I was just explaining this to my grandson who's being toilet trained. There are things which are private, but which are not shameful. Going to the bathroom is private, but it's not shameful. I'm not embarrassed if anyone knows that I go to the bathroom, because it's a normal part of human nature that we all have to do. But it's not a bad thing. But
it's a metaphor for a bad thing.
It's a metaphor, but
because why? Because you don't want people to see you do it.
But you
just
don't
like
want
you don't
people to see you do it because it's private, not because it's bad. There's a difference.
No, it's because it represents the failings of the human body. It represents the imperfections of the human body.
I don't see it that way.
Yes.
Especially
That's why
when I'm telling my grandson he makes
but
on the toilet, that's a wonderful thing.
Of course you should be proud of him, and you should buy him a big toy when he's potty trained. But the point is that why are we embarrassed to defecate in front? Why is it private? Why is it?
It's private, but it's not shameful.
It's natural. So let's all poop right in front of each other, right? Why not? Why don't we do it?
There are things that are private, but it's not shameful.
But why? But why are we embarrassed not to do it in front of others? What is it? What is it about defecation, and what is it about even flatulence that causes us not to want to do it in public, right? Why is that?
It's tznius.
But what defines the norms of tznius? It's because those are bodily actions which represent that we're not completely in control of our bodies. We're not perfect beings. And that's why it's a good metaphor for people who have shortcomings.
No, but I don't think it's because we're not in control of our bodies. There are a lot of physical things that we do that we want to do in private. And it's not because it's a shortcoming, but because you want it to be a private matter.
Yes, but I'm asking you to define the essence of why we want it to be private. And I'm telling you, that's what I'm trying to suggest to you, is that once you identify what it is about defecation that makes it into something that we want to do privately, you'll identify it's because the fecal matter is disgusting and it's smelly and it represents something that the waste product that is within us. That's all that it represents. So anyway, to your 4-year-old, how old is he? 4. Okay.
Almost.
Okay. So for the 4-year-old, you're so proud of him because he's a 4-year-old. But we wouldn't congratulate an adult for potty training in front of his mother, right? We wouldn't do that. That's something that he should be. Okay. Anyway, I think I've proved my point. I just want to end off with this one idea, okay? This is an exercise in trying to find the message that is inherent in all of the mitzvahs of the Torah, especially when we read about the Jewish people preparing to go into the land of Israel. The commandments to go out to war, especially, are very, very personal messages to each and every one of us. I look at the recent war that we experienced in Eretz Yisrael, and I notice that the metaphors are all over the place. Do you know that we had the missiles flying overhead, and we were able to very successfully develop a technology to shoot them down? When the threat is overt and overhead and clearly visible, it's much easier to destroy. But what did we have difficulty with? The tunnels. The tunnels that were below ground, the things that we couldn't immediately see as things that are threatening us. And that in itself is a metaphor that I think that we need to learn from. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is presenting us with lessons in the world constantly. We just have to see them. And the lesson of the tunnels is, of course, is that sometimes the greatest threat to our ability to serve Hashem are the covert threats, the things that look innocuous, the things that look harmless, but really do present us with these very insidious covert threats that we only discover when they're right on top of us. A good example might be, YouTube, right, on the internet, right? Innocuous because they're funny videos of, little kittens frowning or smiling or whatever it is, right? But you have to know that there's a lot of stuff there, and you have to monitor it and make sure that your kids don't discover those tunnels that are also within YouTube. Or you can discover the messages yourself. But I just wanted to bring across that point. Okay? Have a great day and a good week.